Growing up, most women that I knew were stay-at-home homemakers. And there is just so much to be said for the past and things that we can learn today from the women that really knew how to do everything. Over time, culturally, things have definitely changed. And you might wonder why old-fashioned homemaking should see a revival. But I truly believe that there are so many ways of doing things that we really need to consider in our life today that could be beneficial for not only us, but our families, our friends, and the people around us. I saw an article off of Pinterest recently that talked about the lost art of homemaking. And this really got me thinking about what those lost things are and are they important? Can we bring them back? And I've got a lot to unpack in this episode. First of all, culturally, women of the past who were homemakers, they were a one-income family because their husbands were the ones going off to work, and the women stayed at home with the kids, raising the family, taking care of the home, doing the grocery shopping, and she had to know how to do a lot of things. And women were actually trained at school to be homemakers, and it was considered a career. Being a one-income household would have played a huge part in shaping the way that women did things because they needed to be extremely frugal and they needed to stretch the dollar that their husbands were working so hard to go out and get. And so it was the woman's duty as a wife to make sure that she was spending that money in the right way and stretching that dollar as far as she possibly could. Meals were a lot more simple, and I think homes were also a lot more simple. And in today's society, we are bombarded with advertisements, and consumerism is at an absolute high. But things in the past just were not that way. I'm sure consumerism still existed, but I feel like the meals were just very simple and plain. Having a regular rotation of meals that are family favorites was a little trick that an old-fashioned homemaker would have. And this is just so smart. Mondays could be pasta, Tuesdays could be chicken, and Fridays could be a pizza night, for instance. And knowing what you're going to be making just makes it so that you don't have to think about it and you already know what to do. This is something that I want to implement into my home because I feel like this just takes the guesswork out and this just simplifies the whole process. Being frugal and stretching the dollar seeped into all areas of homemaking, including getting dressed. Women not only had to think about their own wardrobes, but they had to think about their entire family and plan a year's worth of clothing accordingly. And having what today is considered a capsule wardrobe was definitely what was done back in the day. Clothing was not seen as a disposable good like it is today. And people only had so many items. A woman probably would have had a house dress, something that she wore around the house. She would have had her going out clothes, and then she would have had a few more dressier items for things like church. And it was a very basic wardrobe, but a woman was always put together and looking her best. And I think there's something to be learned from that, because in today's society, we really constantly buy new clothes, get rid of clothes, but caring for your wardrobe is a lot of work. And not only can we save money, but we can also take better care of what we actually have if we have less. So minimalism is just such an important part of what we can do today in order to live more frugally and be more intentional. Traditional skills like gardening were not only a means of saving money, but it was also a survival skill and something that a woman would have had to know how to do. And it would have been part of her work as a homemaker to make sure that she was making the best use of the space that she had on her property. And beauty was also very important. And having things like flower gardens were definitely something that they did. Here, I'm potting up my houseplants and dividing up this snake plant into separate plants because it sprouted out some babies, and so I'm potting some up. I gave one of them to my daughter as a gift, and this is going to save me money because instead of going to the nursery to buy more plants, I'm propagating the plants that I have. I also went and picked up a few spring flowers like these daffodils, just to bring a little brightness into my home for spring. And I feel like this is a very old-fashioned thing that women would have done. And it's very cost-effective because buying a bouquet of flowers at the store is so expensive. But to buy a few spring bulbs is pretty inexpensive, and the flowers last so much longer. This is something that you can do no matter where you live in order to feel more connected to nature. You don't have to necessarily have a yard and a garden, and even having some pots for herbs over the summertime can add such a freshness to the dishes that you create, no matter your budget or where you live. Other traditional skills that we can spend time learning are things like canning and preserving, sewing and mending, gardening, knitting and needlecraft, hair cutting, and cooking and bread making. These are all skills that are so appreciated and needed that can save you money. And honestly, if we don't keep these things alive and keep doing them, we become more and more dependent on the system and other people and a lot less self-sufficient. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways for me of why it's so important to keep these old-fashioned skills alive is self-sufficiency. I'm currently making some homemade buns, and bread making was something that was done in the home. You just can't replicate the flavor of home cooked bread and home cooked meals. There's just something about it that is just so comforting, and it's like a warm hug. And I feel like in today's fast paced society, and especially with women working outside of the home, it's so convenient to go and buy food from the store that's pre made. But once you taste home cooked meals, it's just so hard to go back to having convenience food. Not only is it expensive, but it's not good for you. It's toxic, unhealthy, and you're trading a lot in order to have that convenience. I am definitely not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and I still struggle all the time with this. And I am a work in progress for sure. But there is just so much value in serving your family a home cooked meal. And I do think that there is so much value in this idea of that weekly menu that just keeps rotating and having those core recipes that you know by heart that your family enjoys. And this is something that I am actively working on because I just think it's so smart. And I know women back in the day, they had their recipe cards and they would have people over for dinner or go to other people's homes, and they would try a new meal that they really liked, and then they would ask for the recipe. And then that would become a new meal that they would add to the rotation. And I just love this. And I think that women are keeping this tradition alive by sharing recipes online. But because there is just so many recipes to choose from, I think that that's what creates this sort of problem, and that it's an overload. There's too much, and we need to get back to basics. Now, when it comes to the home, and in this scene here, I'm redoing my fireplace mantle for spring. I'm taking everything down, and I had another picture that I wanted to put up and try here, but I really struggled with this whole arrangement. This fireplace is really sort of an awkward shape, and it's kind of hard to decorate, so I struggle with that here. But I think that women had a lot less items to care for in the home. And in today's standards, I think we all just have way too much stuff, including myself. And if you've been on my channel a while, you know that I've been working on minimalism and decluttering, getting rid of things. And I know I still have too much stuff. And I feel like caring for the home is just going to be so much simpler when we pare things back. And we can give ourselves so much more freedom and time by having less things. I'm working with this picture and this mirror, and I tried so many different arrangements here, but in the end, I ended up taking the mirror and that picture and donating them to the thrift store because I realized that that square picture was just not the right shape for this fireplace, and that my original cabin picture was a better fit for this wide sort of space that I have here. And the mirror just wasn't working no matter what I did. So I took those and donated them. And, you know, it's hard to say goodbye to things sometimes, but maybe it's the best thing if it's just cluttering your home. And I need to do a lot more of that, and I still have work to do. But I'm finding that the more I get rid of and the more that I donate, the more time I get back, because I'm not spending all of my time organizing, sorting, putting things away. And, you know, there's more clean surfaces that are easier to dust, less clutter, and my life is just being made so much easier. And although I have a ways to go, I have accomplished a lot, and it's making my life so much easier. If you're an older woman who has been a stay-at-home homemaker, what are some of the skills and traditions that you think are important for the modern woman to learn and keep alive? I think this is such an important subject, and I really want some of the opinions of the women that I admire and try to be like. As my parents are getting older, more and more I see myself being a lot like my mom and really recognizing what a great homemaker she was and what an example she set for me. And I want desperately more than anything to be like her. When I first started thinking about this subject, it felt a little bit depressing because I felt like there was no hope for the future with the way that things have gone. But thinking about everything and putting it into perspective has made me realize that there is hope and that we can keep these traditions alive by including things like frugality and minimalism and having a capsule wardrobe, things that have been modernized, but they really stem from another generation. If we work on keeping those things alive and knowing where they came from, I think we're headed into a good place. Another thing that I want to say in conclusion to this video is that we can lead by example. A lot of the things that my mom did growing up were just observations. She didn't necessarily teach me how to sew or teach me how to can, but by observing her doing those things, it made me realize how important they are. And so I think that there is hope for women and future generations of homemakers. And this is the end of this video. So I'm going to wish you all the best, and I'll see you next time.